Greetings, Tezos Nation. Welcome to another edition of TezTalks Live. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons. Joining me today is Marco Maraggi, aka Limbo, Tezos artist, curator, and community member/builder. Marco is joining us today to discuss the current state of the Tezos art ecosystem and the ongoing evolution of NFT art here in the Tezos ecosystem and beyond. Hi, Marco. Where are you right
Hello.
now? How's the weather?
Weather is very fine, pretty bluish, in this room at least. Outside, it was sunny until a few minutes ago, since it's already night, almost 7 p.m. Doing great. Very happy to be here.
And sorry, where are you?
I'm in Italy, sorry.
Okay.
I'm in Udine, precisely, nearby Venice.
Okay, very nice. As we always do here on TezTalks Live, can you get the ball rolling by telling us a bit about your background and how you got started on your journey toward becoming a professional artist?
Yeah, okay. Of course, as many colleagues would say, I always were drawn to art since I was little. So I started drawing very early, at around probably 3, since I saw cartoons on the TV, and I became obsessed by them. And so I started drawing very, very early. And then many things happened, of course, especially during high school. But afterwards, during high school, I started playing guitar. So at first, I wanted to become a musician, I guess. And after this, teenage life crisis, I settled on trying to become an illustrator and a comic book artist. So everything I did after high school was oriented towards trying to build an artistic knowledge. And yeah, I went to college and studied art, and then I actually went to a comic book school, which which is where I learned everything I know basically right now.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
And how did you find your way to the exciting world of blockchain technology?
That was very weird, since back in, I guess it was early 2021, probably we were around October, and a guy I knew from Instagram, an artist friend, his nickname was, well, it doesn't matter. I don't recall it right now. Anyway, this fantastic person used to follow me on Instagram and had seen some of my pieces, which were actually the first pieces I minted on Object after. Would become the first pieces. And yeah, he saw those pieces and told me, hey, you should check Tezos. It's an incredible scene. There's something going on in there, and maybe your work would fit. So basically, I said, okay, let's go. What should I do? And he gave me 1 Tezo, and it all started from there.
Okay.
He gave me the first Tezo, and I remember one night, the first night I minted something. It was night here. It was around 2 a.m. And I was awake since I was working on something, probably a comic back then. And I said to myself, okay, let's try it. Let's become a millionaire through NFTs. And this is how I ended up broke.
And prior to that, you didn't have any experience with blockchain or crypto at all?
No, those were my first experiences, but jokes aside, I was very drawn in by the glorious scene and the ferment that was happening on Twitter. those days. There were a lot of incredible artists, and also I had never seen, for example, glitch art in my whole life. It was the first time I saw it as a post on Twitter, and I I simply went crazy because it was super super incredible to see, and then it started.
Okay. So what was it about the sort of intersection between art and blockchain that inspired you to get involved with NFTs and blockchain powered art?
It was absolutely amazing to think about a medium that allowed you to do the same things you would do as a digital artist on Instagram, for example, where you kept producing work in order to get likes. But in this specific environment and ecosystem, you not only got eventually likes through Twitter, but you actually happen to eventually make a living out of it, or at least receive something, a reward, an economic reward
Mm.
through your efforts. So that was absolutely revolutionary to me, since back then you had, of course, Patreon if you wanted to build a strong base, but there was nothing, and to this day probably there isn't anything as quick and as reliable in terms of technology as what I saw in NFTs for an artist. So
Okay. And you've been building a presence and a following in the digital art domain for a few years now, it sounds like. What can you tell us about that experience and what it's been like for you?
it's been, of course, at the start, it's been absolutely groundbreaking, because I was immersed in a lot of things, visual things that I would have never have met probably if I went through an IRL path with my illustration career. So I was immersed in a lot of impulses, different genres, different things occupying my mind. It was also, we were still inside the COVID years, so a lot of people were at home. So I met with a lot of people. There was this incredible sense of being part of some sort of collective consciousness for a while, even. So it's been groundbreaking for me. It surely made me grow a lot. I think that even as a person, at first I was very naive when I started, very naive. But after these experiences, after all these years, because it's almost 3 years, it's quite a lot, even though it doesn't seem so. 3 4 years almost. um, yeah, at first I was very naive, even in the way that I actually talk to people online, etc., etc. But the experience has made me grow a lot
Mm.
in many ways. So at first I hit a very high for my personal history, since I found myself with a very big fan base at first, at the start, during the, of course, during the so-called NFT bubble. But there was a real community, so these weren't things I was used to as an artist. I was very, a very shy person, and afterwards I had to kind of learn how to handle a community, how to handle people online, which is very strange, especially in crypto land, since a lot of them are anonymous. And yeah, it's been quite a journey for sure. I think that at the very end, I think I've grown a lot as an artist, uh, by doing this, and a lot of my art, I hope, has improved and changed, and I challenge myself with different challenges. So I've grown a lot in quite a few years, and probably the same time it would have took me way more if I kept doing this only in real life.
Okay.
This is my perception.
All right. And you mentioned that your sort of introduction to Tezos was somebody suggesting that you check it out and somebody sending you a Tez and things sort of grew from there. So as you were doing that, what was it about Tezos that appealed to you?
The art, first thing, art. The art that was on Hackathon back then was something that, as I already said before, I had never seen. It was just out of this world. There were people like, of course, there were Xcopy at first, but many others that just drove my attention, and they were just unbelievably different from anything else I had seen on Instagram.
Yeah.
Many of my illustrator colleagues or other people, and glitch art and many movements such as making gifs. The idea of making gifs was not at all something I had considered before joining the space. And so yeah, I found myself drawn to art at first, and then I started loving, of course, the technology, because it was very fast. Even though people have complaints about Ikan always crashing back then and stuff like that, it was still very effective in what it did. So it allowed us to actually mint and you know, get sold out eventually in seconds, because back then it was like that. And it provided the opportunity to be seen by this huge community that back then was interested in the medium of NFTs. So
And it sounds like a lot of that experience was sort of remote, doing that
mhm.
as you say, like during COVID, all of those interactions happening online. As far as like where you live, what are the digital art scene and the sort of blockchain slash Tezos community like in Italy?
There are many. I think there's one in Venice for sure. I remember there were some events organized back then, and also there are some in Rome, in Milan, but I don't live in these centers, so I would still have to move by train.
Mm,
And I basically never attended an event, unfortunately. Also because I was on Tezos, and I've been on Tezos most of my career actually in NFTs. So there weren't many Tezos related events in Italy happening. There were more maybe Ethereum sometimes. Um, and then from a certain point on, I also stopped getting interested in these events, since basically I didn't feel the need to move for a while. But yeah, if it was today, I would immediately attend something, having the opportunity. If it happened today, for example. Um, it was weird because everybody was at home, as I was saying, so I didn't even feel the difference, you know.
yeah.
We were all kind of hikikomoris on our own, uh, living on very weird time zones and trying to mint the best art possible, that we could create at the moment. And it was very cool in some way, and very weird under under different lenses, you know. Depends on how you see it.
Okay. And despite not going to the events and despite a lot of that experience being completely remote, and your involvement taking shape in that way, um,
Mhm.
you've sort of progressed to becoming a pretty active community member. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, it's pretty fair. I hope so. Yeah, I think that one of the greatest things about this technology is that it allowed a lot of people from all over the world to actually almost meet or get to know each other through the internet, but also in a, you know, a job oriented, even in a job oriented manner, which was something that never happened as much before. I think also, of course, the pandemic probably helped for this to happen during that specific time. But yeah, I never had the need to actually move because my art, either my art moved instead of myself. Maybe I had something that there were some, exhibitions, which I basically sent my art to digitally, and my art was exposed in there, and that was very cool. So yeah, I
without you
managed.
having to leave your home.
Yeah, I never left my home. Basically, no, I'm not a really hikikomori, but yeah, I never moved. I was here and I kept doing my thing.
Okay. And speaking of exhibitions, I understand you're currently in the process of curating a collection with our friend Retro Manni for an upcoming
Absolutely.
exhibition.
Yeah,
How much can you tell us about that project?
I think it's got not much, unfortunately, still since we're still organizing it. But all I can say is that it's gonna be extremely dope if everything comes out as we expect it to be. There will be a lot, I mean a lot of Tezos artists involved. Many of them, which of course, all of them, which we love, we desperately love as artists. So we are trying to create something in which their art will have a spot and shine. And yeah, this thing is gonna be happening probably in April, late April. And I did other things with Retro and with the object team. As of recently, for example, last summer, I was involved in organizing an event called Share for Tezos, which went pretty well. So I really hope that even this time around, me and Retro will manage to pull it off and create something pretty unique in terms of exhibitions. It's our first exhibition, so and I can also say I think as another little teaser that it's gonna be centered around video games and the way they
Interesting.
influenced a lot of art on Tezos. So we'll see.
Okay.
Mhm.
So you can't get into a lot of specifics. You can tease it a little bit.
Unfortunately, yeah, unfortunately, no.
So for those who are curious, where can they where can they watch to learn more about this project as it evolves?
As it evolves, they must surely follow me or Retro, me as Limbo Universe on Twitter, or Retro Manni as Retro Manni on Twitter, I think. Or Object One, I guess they'll make announcements because we're actually creating this on Object One. Will be the exhibition will be there. As soon as more information comes in, we will absolutely drop it online. So
Okay,
no worries.
that's
No
fair. That's
worries.
fair.
Mhm.
So I know you touched on this a little bit earlier, but having gotten involved so actively in this space, how has your work evolved through that process?
It went through certainly it went through many different pathways. And for example, it had an evolution. It was based on still images at first, completely still. Then it evolved into GIFs. I used to have pieces which changed in color, and I used to animate them through GIFs. Then afterwards, due to a very strange series of events, I decided to get back into music just to make soundtracks for my NFTs. So I started adding soundtracks. And then I discovered that there was a lot of pixel art going on. for this is last year, 2024. I decided to abandon my raster aesthetic, which was based on mostly retro anime and stuff from my decade, the 90s, or even earlier, the 80s, in terms of nostalgia, old cartoons, stuff like that. I moved on since I saw specifically the work of Mac that was very inspiring, but also I was a big follower of other artists. One, unfortunately, he's not among us anymore as active artist. He's still alive, fortunately, but not as an artist on Tezos. His name was One Bit Necro. One Bit Necro was one of my biggest influences probably for the new collection I'm building. And I actually know him real life because he's a comic artist from Greece, and we became friends online. And yeah, basically I was inspired by these people to transform my style into something different. And so I started creating pixel art pieces. I really don't know, and make the soundtracks for them, of course. So I really don't know where the journey can take me if I keep doing this. In the next few years, I don't know where I can end up, because it's a continuous evolution. And I think I'm not the only artist that went through these changes. It's very cool, actually, very challenging and exciting
Yeah.
to be in the scene, in the art
Well,
scene.
it's interesting because you're going through your evolution as an artist while the technology is going through its own evolution, right?
Sure.
Um, so for those who want to see your work and are curious to track how that evolution is going, where's the best place for your work to be found?
I think that nowadays you can have the best idea of my work by checking my object page, probably, since a lot of fresh work is minted there. And yeah, you can find it, yeah, just by searching, looking, typing Limbo into the search button, and
On
should
object.
be able to find, yeah, on object, you
Okay.
should be able to find me. There's also an Instagram if you want to check it out, Limbo Universe. Again, I think if you type Limbo Universe, you should be able to find me.
Okay.
And I always post on Twitter. I'm not that much of an Instagram user, unfortunately. So
Fair enough.
mhm.
This is all great stuff so far. I'm excited to learn more, but before we dive into the nitty gritty, are you ready for the world famous TezTalks lightning round?
Yeah, of course.
Great. Then it is lightning round time. Remember, there are no wrong answers. This is just for fun so our viewers can get to know you a little bit better. Are you ready?
Yeah,
Are you a night owl or an early riser?
night owl,
Exercise or naps?
naps.
Movies or video games?
I have to say movies, unfortunately.
Ah,
Yeah.
nothing unfortunate about that. What's your favorite country to visit for a vacation?
France.
Very nice. If you were elected king of the world, what's the first thing you would do?
Mm, make everybody healthier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Name one thing you will never do again.
Mm. Oh, this I can say. Probably. Mm, uh, I'm trying to think of things that I can say publicly. Maybe, yeah, okay. It's borderline, but probably LSD. LSD. I won't do it again.
That's fair. That's fair. Probably a good decision.
Yeah.
What's the secret to happiness?
Mm, balance and consistency.
Very nice. Do you have any pets?
Yeah, a cat. Not here, unfortunately.
What's the
At my
cat's name?
mom's, at my mom's home. His name is Goofy, and
Goofy the cat.
he's a black cat.
And finally, what is your favorite thing to do on a rainy day?
Probably read some comics.
Excellent answer. This concludes the TezTalks lightning round. Let's get back into it. So now that we've talked about your background and your journey down the Tezos art rabbit hole, I'd like to zoom out a little bit and talk about the state of NFTs and blockchain based art more broadly. Um, Obviously, like this is a very interesting time in the ongoing history of the NFT. The boom
That-
times when you first became involved are now kind of a distant memory, and yet you and so many others have continued building and experimenting in this space anyway. Why do you think that is?
I think we found a community, and many of us were kind of not willing to let it go, first of all, because we saw the worth in what we experienced. Worth that was based, of course, also in economical rewards, but not only, and mostly as a creative path. And I think the love for the medium is one of the biggest things that allows so many people to keep going.
Mm,
It's impossible to find this medium anywhere else. So you can't actually happen to create pieces that you can do it maybe in galleries, museums, stuff like that, but it's way harder to have, for
mm,
example, pieces that are animated and you also have soundtracks, and there are endless possibilities with the medium. And so I think the love for that is what has helped build a genuine community of artists
okay.
on that.
And given the potential that you see there, um, do you see a place for NFTs and or other forms of blockchain based art in the art world of the future?
I hope so. Of course, it's one of my biggest hopes. I think that it sounds very stupid that it can be it, since artistically the medium is very unique. Artistically, the medium is worth it, and it's worth it for many people, as we were saying. So not only for artists, there are still some collectors around who believe both maybe in the coin, but also in the art of the artists. So yeah, I guess we need to find ways in order to change the narrative around the NFTs, because it's being sold very, very badly, really, really badly. Everything has been sold very badly from the start, in my opinion. So at least related to art, and we need to change that narrative and see what happens. Maybe I think it's very hard in the future for this specific activity, and for even for this community. I mean, the people that are currently around Tezos, not to have a place in. I don't know if in art history, but they certainly have built something. I'm
Mm,
not talking, of course, about myself, because I'm just, a small particle spinning in the wind. But there's many people that actually did something relevant, and they should be recognized even outside of our community. I mean,
okay. So as far as the Tezos art community as it exists right now, um, what's going on there in 2025? Like what is the narrative of Tezos art right now?
I think it's almost non-existent. I don't want to be rude or anything, but from my perspective, anybody I talk to that isn't, of course, involved in creating art for Tezos doesn't even know what Tezos is at the moment. At least in Italy, of course. We're talking my everyday reality. So. This is the situation, and so I think this is also why people are so scared, not only about Tezos but of blockchains and crypto in general. It actually didn't arrive to the masses. as we hoped for. Back in 2021, there was a lot of talks. There were a lot of talks about, massification, whatever you want to call it. But the masses outside, for some people, which are into um, sectors of the crypto community, they don't know anything about it, and they don't even probably. I don't know if they want to know anything, and also the narrative around it. You will lose money. It's a pyramidal. I don't know how you pronounce that, but pyramidal scheme, cabals, whatever it is. These narratives have helped, of course, creating a very bad perception, even among fellow artists. For example, I have many fellow colleagues and artists, real life, on Instagram, for example, even, and they despise AI, for example. But the crypto community loves AI. So there's also this constant, uh, you know, this contradiction.
Yeah.
So we need just everything can be sold, in my opinion. Everything.
Yeah.
It's just about how you sell it. We need to build a consistent narrative in order to sell this thing again to
Well,
everybody.
there's a lot to parse there, right? Like the first thing you said is about whether or not people know about Tezos specifically. I think if you look at the nature of the industry, it's an
Hmm.
industry where there are somewhere in the neighborhood of 10,000 different cryptocurrencies in the mix right
You're
now.
right. You're
Expecting
right.
expecting people to have a lot of knowledge about any specific one is probably not realistic in that environment, right?
You're
So
right.
what we're
You're
really
right.
talking about is it's a question of, do people know about blockchain? And I would say a lot of people do know that it exists at the very least, right? They
They
may not
heard
know the
it.
individual chains, but they know about the technology and they know that it's present, right?
Yeah, I think if you, at least in Italy, I'm sure in the US it's different. The situation is totally different. But if in Italy you go to, even a guy in his twenties, or a girl in their twenties, and tell them, yeah, ask them, what do you know about blockchains? How do they work? Have you ever experienced anything around the blockchain? Unfortunately, they'll answer no, because they don't have investments or anything related in there yet. So it's not that massified, at least in Italy. I don't know in the rest of the world how it is. Of
I
course,
think that's sorry, go ahead.
no, they heard it. They heard about crypto in the media.
Yeah.
They heard it, yeah, in the newspaper. They read it in the newspaper. They know about Elon Musk and what he's doing, generally, but they don't really know what we're talking about specifically
Yeah.
when when we're talking blockchains.
Yeah. And I think like to continue parsing all of that, it's really about delivering tools that people want, things that people want, things that people are going to interact with. They don't necessarily need to understand what blockchain is. They don't really necessarily need to
No.
understand how all of this works. If they're interacting with the platforms, they're interacting with the tools, and they want the things that are on offer, people can interact with, or the expectation is that people will interact with this technology whether they know it or not, that it's inevitable, right? And I
Mm-hmm.
think, you know even in all the negativities surrounding the NFT winter, there still is, at least to my eyes, an interesting value proposition for things like collectibles, whether that's art or whether that's like sports memorabilia or trading cards, for example. Um,
Definitely. Yeah, definitely.
so, what do you think it will take to make that value proposition into a reality in the days ahead?
I don't know. Back then, we all thought that if a big company, for example, made investments for example, providing NFTs through crypto. Sorry, providing NFTs in exchange for something for good they would deliver in real life. Even there were in very interesting news about some collaboration with EA, the developing company.
Yeah.
Everything really sounded incredible in my opinion, and it still is. But unfortunately, people back then kind of exploded in the comments, especially of course Instagram comments. I mean, normal people, not average video gamers, didn't want this to happen because monetization in gaming for them was already a sacrilege,
Mm.
and so speaking to them about crypto, and also I think that people really despise the idea of knowing that somebody else can eventually make money through something. And usually when they get to hear about big money numbers made through a certain activity, it's pretty probable that they'll develop some jealousy or some anger towards that. And
Mm.
back then NFTs were very big, and so the news and the media, the only way to cover those things was to say for how much did they did
Yeah.
sell. And many people probably got pissed at that. They just couldn't really process the fact that a digital JPEG could sell for those amounts.
Yeah.
Uh, but they still allow, for example, for Pokemon cards, for a Charizard card base set to be worth around, I think, $200,000. So what's the point? I ask myself. It's pretty much the same thing,
Yeah.
and the
It is.
format isn't so different.
They're
And
they're they're almost identical. They're just
yeah,
different mediums for the same concept. You're
yeah,
collecting something, that thing has rarity, supply and demand creates
exactly.
value, right? But as far as marketing a technology,
Mhm.
simply talking about the money and the money going, like, that's not a sustainable marketing model, right? There has
Mhm.
to be there has to be the desire underneath, and those things have to have at least perceived value for people. Like, I want this thing, I want to have it in my collection, right?
Yeah, I guess so. Maybe the difference is that nobody was actually allowed to build emotion, to build that kind of connection with the audience, unfortunately. So we need, in a certain way, to reestablish that, as you said. We need that kind of emotional connection in order to justify these things. And for some collectors, I'm sure, if you ask some collectors on Tezos, but even Ethereum, people that spend tons and tons of their own money
Yeah.
on art, on digital art, they will tell you that they are emotionally connected to the experience, to the artist, to following profiles on the internet, discovering new things. And actually, that was something worth it for them. But all of a sudden, all of this actually, yeah, doesn't seem to be sustainable anymore. So we need to find new ways, probably.
Well, I mean, you've mentioned comic books a couple of times. Like,
Yeah.
if you take a look at the successful brands in that space, if you're talking about something like Spider-Man, right? That is, you know, 60 years old. Where 60 years ago somebody started making something and they continued telling that story for 60 years, and now it's a brand that everybody knows, right?
So fascinating. Yeah.
So the expectation that any artist would be able to develop that kind of connection in the space of from 2020 to now is probably not realistic,
No.
right? It's really a matter of having a passion for making it, continuing to make it, and
Yeah,
allowing people will come to appreciate it. If you continue to make it and it's good, people will come to appreciate it, and over time that kind of happens organically, right?
exactly. I think those artists that you still see around, every one of those artists is here insisting and trying to build eventually for the future.
Mm.
Many of them are builders that are and visionaries and dreamers and people you don't often find actually in real life that much, probably, or maybe there are more than we expect. But I saw, I met a lot of dreamers and visionaries in this space over the last years, and I think we are all united. But even collectors, even the ones that trust the technology, even the devs, every one of us, at the end of it all, in the community, is still united by this sense of experiencing something that we're convinced deep down that is just at the start, at the very start.
Yeah,
I think we're still in the beginning of things, and
of course.
even even though there was a bubble eventually, if you want to call it like that, and it burst, um, it didn't manage the explosion didn't manage to kill everybody, and the ones who remained are actually probably the strongest of them all. So I don't know if you've seen that somebody has made a book about Tezos recently. Uh, it came out on Amazon. It was called, I think, Tezos. It came out like yesterday, and
Okay.
it was called Tezos, the NFT crash diet. Like, and it talked about the early Ikatanang scene and why everybody was still actually all these artists were still around and creating even though they're apparently starving. I
Well,
it's true.
the fundamental issue with having a bubble like that is that it creates an expectation that things are always going to be this way, which they're
Exactly.
clearly not, and that's how bubbles work, right? So I can understand how it could be disappointing for somebody who saw that bubble forming, thought it was going to continue forever, and it didn't. But you know the value proposition is still the is still there. The technology still works. Like the concept still makes sense. It just
The
maybe didn't
exhibitions.
happen on the timeline that somebody was hoping it would, right?
Exactly. I still think that has the market has proven many times already because I say I'm here since 2021 and I of course I'm perceived as a veteran or whatever but but there were veterans even before I came and there's people if you ask to I don't know for example Al Criego is here since 2017
Mm-hmm.
probably and he's a giant at this point probably still believing in the medium still going on exhibitions are still being made they work very well actually I had the pleasure of having a piece being exposed in Paris recently unfortunately I wasn't able to be there but there was an event with Tezos and my art was displayed on a very cool screen alongside the one of many other artists, and it was amazing just to see. I looked at the videos and the presentation was very professional. So and people attended the event most of all. There were many people at the event, and the room was filled with people. So I think we still have hope. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here, of course. We still have a lot of hope,
Well,
and we
that's why we that's why we still think it's important to have conversation with artists who are building here, where you know despite books that are written, despite bubbles burst, like despite winters happening and this sort of up and down thing that everybody's been experiencing since this technology launched. Like, there are people building things here, there are communities forming, there are things evolving, right? And it's important to understand that and recognize that and talk about that as it's happening, right?
Definitely, it's always incredible to talk with members of the community and confront on things. And I think that that really is the reason why also things are still so alive under a certain lens. The more we confront with and I'm very very happy also to be here and to have this conversation with you. Honestly, I'm loving it because it doesn't happen so much, or at least I wish it happened more in my life to have this sort of in-depth conversation about the state of things.
Yeah.
And
We're doing our
yeah,
best.
yeah. So congratulations on that. But
Yeah.
also, I think artists should confront more because every time it happens, something magical appears out of the blue and through collaborations, but also outside of collaborations, even just building friendships between artists can lead to incredible things.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we'll see what happens with the market, but I still think that nobody really knows. You've seen it maybe way better than me, than myself, but like 2 months ago, at the end of 2024, the coin was going upwards, and probably the spirit was very different from the one you find nowadays, skimming through Twitter and looking at the homepage. It's always like that. It's always up and downs. It's always been like that. And also, I remember even during the highest or brighter times that many like to recall, there were a lot of issues, and it wasn't that easy anyway. There were many, for example, many things to face, even things that nowadays seem so common. Um, they are because somebody broke ground,
Hmm.
uh, and allowed for these things to actually be perceived as common today
Yeah.
in the space.
Yeah. And those
So
those evolutions are part of a new technology, consumer facing technology sort of evolving and taking shape, right? And I think we're on the same page with that. And
definitely.
we could go on all day, but unfortunately we're coming to the end of our time here.
Okay.
Um, to our viewers, thanks for watching. If you'd like to get in touch with us, our social media contacts can be found at tezoscommons.org/TezTalks. We'd love to hear from you. Marco, thanks so much for joining us today. It's
A
always awesome
pleasure.
to speak to the folks helping the Tezos art community and ecosystem thrive. Is there anything else you wanted to mention before we sign off?
Not really. I just want to mention that. No, I want to say hi to a few people, if I can,
Quickly,
really
yeah.
briefly. Really quickly, I wanna say hi to Mac and to Retro Manni and to Adrian Pocobelli, which are incredible sources of inspiration to me in the space. So, hi, friends.
Hi from me
Um,
as well.
yeah, I don't think I have many other things to say. Just follow these accounts I mentioned because they're perfect examples also to of the energy you can find in the space.
And we look forward to seeing your collaborative curated collection with Retro Manni in the near future when you're ready to tell us a little bit more.
Amazing. It's gonna be a huge honor
Right on.
to.
To everyone out there in Tezos land, thanks for joining us on Tez Talks Live. I'm Stu from the Tezos Commons, and our awesome guest has been Marco Maraggi, aka Limbo. Now let's go support the Tezos ecosystem's awesome digital art community.